Call the meeting to order for the Lincoln Way Community High School District 210 Board of Education regular meeting for Thursday, August 2nd, 2018. If you could please stand as you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome everyone in attendance. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Glass? Here. Ms. Janice Doyle? Here. Mr. Luchetti?
Here.
Mr. Lulo?
Here.
Mr. Janik?
Here.
Mr. Costick?
Here.
Mr. Kirking?
Here. Thank you. Next is public addressing the Board of Education. There's two people signed up. Elizabeth Burkhart.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yep.
It's not on.
Oh, we sound like it. We heard it.
Okay. As was reported in the Chicago Tribune on July 27, 2018, the Lincoln Way Madrigals will no longer be permitted to perform at church services in the surrounding communities, as has been the tradition for many years. Why? A student didn't complain. A parent didn't complain. A constituent didn't complain. A religious intolerance group from Madison, Wisconsin, with no standing in District 210, called the Freedom from Religious Foundation, wrote a letter of complaint to the district, citing an alleged constitutional violation involving the district's madrigal choirs, and asking the district to ensure its choirs performed only at secular facilities in the future. The Madison group used a single case, Doe versus Elmbrook, to support its argument in this very complex legal area. The case cited was referring to the use of a school for a graduation, which is obviously a required event, not, as in this case, an optional Christmas program at surrounding churches. The argument ignored other court cases that may be far more relevant to this situation, such as Buckman versus West High School, which addressed school choir performances of religious-based music in religious facilities, or Lemon versus Kurtzman, which set the standard for school and church separation as referenced in Buckman. The Madison group also states that religious iconography present in churches makes it appear that the district endorses a particular religion. Yet, the Madrigals have performed at facilities of different religious denominations for years. So how can that endorse one in particular? Scott Tingley decided to honor the FFRF request straight away without seeking direction on the matter from the 210 board, or sharing insight or legal counsel advice publicly with the board, or with impacted students and parents. Superintendent Tingley reportedly sent a one-sentence response stating that the Madrigals group would no longer perform in the churches without attempt to narrow the issue or address specific issues raised, seeming to validate the complaint letter in its entirety. Our superintendent has now set a very dangerous precedent by addressing such a large, general, and complex complaint such as public school students' use of religious facilities, without research, discussion, and a rigorous response. Furthermore, allowing a tiny organization, one who represents the minority in our country, by the way, that is unrelated to District 210 to impose their intolerant belief system on our students, parents, and community, all of whom encourage cultural and religious tolerance, does not serve our district well at all. By making this decision and responding without sufficient discussion or care, Superintendent Tingley has made our district and all students and extracurricular activities vulnerable to special interest groups everywhere deciding what they think is best for our students and community. So what is next? If there is any kind of religious iconography in a football stadium, are we going to refuse to allow our state champion football team to play them? Thank you. Thank you.
Next, Charles Stark. Mr. Stark.
Rich, can I move the mic?
Yep.
There used to be feedback. Keep going on. I'm not trying to be Stevie Wonder tonight, but unfortunately, in the last 2 years, macular degeneration has robbed me of my ability to read newspapers or write anything down. So I hope I don't come off as a 73-year-old senior geezer. Spoke to the board tonight. I hope I can keep my thoughts where I want them. This past, my name is Charles Stark. I had the pleasure of working 43 years for Lincoln Way District, 210 as the choral director, as the attendance officer, and finally as the music department chairman for my last 5 years, and then going in as auditorium coordinator, finally turning in a box of keys in 2013. Couldn't have been in a better place for my entire career, plus 3 years downstate. You're faced with a very fine line between church and state. We already went against it tonight once by saying one nation under God, what this country was founded on. I'm the guy that caused this way back in 1970 when I had the first Madrigal dinner and founded the Madrigal Singers. In 1971, I went to some local churches, and asked for help from some of the parents or constituents in our community to make us costumes, help us really get this thing off the ground. I had many come forward. In thanks for doing that, the following year, we sang at some local churches. Not as part of the service. I don't consider it part of the service. I don't know exactly everything that's going on now with the directors, but if a student came to me during my years as Madrigal director for 21 years and said, Mr. Stark, my parents don't want me to sing at the Apostolic Church. My parents don't want me to sing at Seventh-day Adventist. They don't want me to sing at the United Church of Christ. That was honored. It is a volunteer extracurricular thing. That was always honored. I think the directors that are now in place, aside from the new director at East that I do not know, I either hired or interviewed all of them down through the years. I think it would be a great loss by just saying you cannot perform in a church in our district. I would say back from 1970 to 1991, we performed in every church that wanted us in our district first. And it was a thank you to those parents that had come forward to help with the Madrigal Singers. If you're a member of the board and have not heard the Madrigal Singers, I encourage you to do so. They're a group of singers that could sing in a telephone booth. Give them a pitch pipe and away they go. They could sing in a Volkswagen, same thing. I think it would be a great loss for many people if we just blanket cut it out. And today in our society, there are so many people just picking at things in our culture, at things this country was founded on. One of them was religious freedom. At no time did I ever hear any minister, parishioner, or anyone else in any of the churches that we performed in our district try to get Johnny to come to our church because it's a great church. Don't go to the one you're going to, or if you're not, please come to ours. I never heard that. That was not the purpose of it. The students, yes, they're singing in a church. Sometimes many of the churches acoustically are better than the fine facilities that we have. And I performed in that auditorium. In the new one, I directed at East with my chorale, and I directed at West, both at North and at East. But many of the churches in our district, UCC in Frankfurt, the one St. John's in Mokina, the little, I don't know if it's a Presbyterian church, white church down here in New Lenox, are better acoustically. The madrigals have recorded in some of our churches for their CDs. What would be lost? What would be lost if they cannot do this anymore as part of a Sunday morning service would be that older person who can't drive at night to get to a madrigal dinner. That person couldn't hear them. The students would lose out of that older person coming saying, I'm by myself, I have no relatives living with me. Thank you for putting me in the holiday spirit. I used to sing, but it's nothing like what you did today. What else would be lost? The parent of a madrigal singer who has been looking forward to their child singing in their church. What else would be lost? A young person, because many times, rather than sending the students off when I directed to Sunday school, they would keep the little kids and the teenagers there because they knew there was going to be songs of the season coming up. It would be that parent that sits around the table after their son or daughter has heard the madrigal singers and says, you know, Dad, I'd really like to do that when I get in high school. And I know for a fact that I had kids tell me in 6th, 7th grade, after they heard the madrigal singers sing at church, that's what they wanted to do. That's what they wanted to do in high school. The joy that is brought to the singers, the joy that is brought to the constituents, and these are constituents in Lincoln Way District 210, set us apart. Set Lincoln Way District apart because of our discipline, because of what we believed in, because of what the board has supported. And I did forget something. Thank you to all the board members, because I know many on this board have been through a lot, but I truly believe the little bit that I hear, you have turned things around. So I'm out of whack here. There's a 73-year-old coming in. A lot would be lost. At no time were the singers ever a part of the hymns, the doxology, the sermon, the homily, the offertory, the benediction. It was a program of holiday music where the students came in. After all that was done, the students exited, anytime singing a religious number, a great and mighty wonder, a religious number, but I'm not saying that every student believes in what they're singing. There are students that sing the Hallelujah chorus, and they may not believe in what they're singing. But the experience of singing that number gives something to the body. So if the board has not had the opportunity to discuss this, I humbly ask that since it appears to be litigation by someone outside of our district, and ma'am, thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
I seriously and humbly ask you to consider the decision, and I think Scott was trying to do the right thing, because years ago, I believe, Scott, I sat in your office and we read through a script that had gone too far to the religious side, and they had to correct that at East. And I agreed with that. It never was, the madrigal dinners were never set up as a religious experience. As a religious experience. No madrigal singer was ever required to sing in church. But when that madrigal group can go into a place like St. John's and hear that ring come back from the acoustics in that room and see the expression on the faces of those people in the congregation and hear the comments afterwards, it's something special for them. And I see singers that have long passed, and literally there have been tens of hundreds and probably thousands of parents that have seen fit to support the madrigal dinners, the madrigal singers. 3 dinners in a 95 square mile area is unheard of. And to get tickets on a Saturday night to some of the dinners, it's tougher than it used to be to get a bear ticket. What else is lost? Some in our community cannot afford to take a family of 5 or 6 to a madrigal dinner. Starting out in 1970 at $2.50 a ticket for dinner in the cafeteria, it would now cost them $150 just because of our economy and the way it's grown. So I think a lot is lost. You have a tough decision. A former Lincoln Way District Superintendent Lee Rosenquist and I used to kid about the Silent Night in 1980 because there were court cases as to whether Silent Night could be sung or it could not be sung. And it wasn't decided, I believe, that it could be sung. That fine line is very difficult, and it is crossed not intentionally. And there was no intentional reason. I didn't take them to the churches intentionally to cross that line. I took them as a thank you to the members of the various churches. And after that first year, needless to say, it caught on. There were times when we'd sing an 8 o'clock service and a 12 o'clock mass. We'd sing in the evening service. There were times when the madrigal singers went out without me and I didn't know it. They kept it quiet because maybe we couldn't get to their church, but there was going to be a special service or a special get-together, a potluck for the singers to come in, and they would go and sing because they didn't need me. They didn't need me at all. So it's a tough decision that Dr. Tingley had to make. I hope that if the board did not have an opportunity to discuss this, that they would discuss it. And as Lee Rosenquist and I often talk about, and I had lunch with him the day that he died in our cafeteria, he said, well, it starts tonight. I said, yeah. And his daughter was in madrigals at that time. My time is done. I ask you to reconsider, at least discuss. If there are options, then that could be done. If not, I say, bring it on. Let the madrigal singers sing in churches. Bring it on.
Amen.
Singing voices fade, the candlelight burns dim. My farewell wish I give to you in the words of Tiny Tim. God bless us, everyone.
Thank you, both speakers, for that topic. All right. Next on our agenda, awards and presentations, recognition, presentation of advanced placement update.
Good evening and welcome back. What a great way to start out, I guess, our new school year. As we prepare getting ready to go into the new school year and celebrate the things that we've done really well over the past year. And that's really what the Safety Score Update's all about. So as we go ahead and begin, I just want to give a quick overview of what we have. What do we have? We have 80 different teachers teaching 25 different AP courses. That's nearly every single one of them that's offered through AP College Board. We had 1,900 plus students enrolled in these courses this past year. Out of our nearly 7,000 students, that's quite a large number of students. Nearly 30% of our Lincoln Way students took at least one AP class. So what does that mean? Well, we gave 3,800 different exams this past year, which equates to about, and of those exams, what it means is about 72% of those students that were enrolled in an AP class actually took the AP exam. So really, how did they do? That's the real question that we have to look at. And so before we go there, I want to talk a little bit about our AP teachers. Our AP teachers do an outstanding job in preparing our students for these AP exams. They offer both before and after school prep sessions. They create their own type of practice tests. They pretty much do whatever it takes to help our students that want to succeed, and they give them an opportunity to succeed on these AP tests. Our students, they do an excellent job in preparing themselves. They do it on their own through different resources that they obtain. They work with their teachers, and they create their own online practice tests that are available out there. So here we go. What we can see over the past number of years is that we continue to grow in the number of students that are taking AP tests, and we continue to grow in the number of students that are succeeding on the AP exams. As you can see, from 2016 to 2018, the number of students that earned a 3 or above on the AP test grew from 2,200 to nearly 2,700 students. That's quite a drastic drop. If you look at that number over on the right-hand side, it's about $4.3 million in tuition that students have earned. And that's just from this past year. What an awesome feat for our students. Looking a little closer, and this is this chart represents AP scholars. And what AP scholars are, and there's different categories, but really what it talks about how truly awesome our students are performing on these tests. You look at an AP Scholar is recognized if they pass 3 or more tests throughout their high school career. An AP Scholar with honors passed 4 or more with a 3.25 average. AP Scholar with distinction, and this one I kind of want to highlight a little bit. If you look at the growth from 2016 to 2018, they grew by almost 100 students that earned that recognition. That's truly an awesome feat. Overall, on the far right-hand side, what you can really see is that the total number of AP scholars from 16 to 18 grew from 476 to almost 700 students. What an awesome feat. Our students truly do well on these AP tests. So moving further, I want to kind of talk a little bit about our national AP scholars. This is really one of those tough categories to fit into. These are the students that earned a 4 or a 5 on 8 or more different AP exams. This year, we had 39 students accomplish this task. Now, you may look to that list, you may recognize a name or two. I think one of our past presidents that came to present to us is on that list. But really, these students are truly some of our academic best. Doing an awesome job. Boy, that really didn't show up too well on that board, did it? All right. We'll skip on the next one here. The next category I want to talk about is one that is kind of rare for us. It's a very significant recognition. It's that of the AP International Diploma. Last year was the first year that we had 2 students that earned that recognition. This year we only have 1, Mr. Liam Hall. But what that is the student gets a 3 or higher on 5 exams in 3 or more different subject areas. So you think about that, they're taking it in calculus and math, in English and social science, in a world language. So Liam here took 12 exams in 5 of the different content areas that are offered. And I can tell you this, after looking at his results, not only did he score a 3 or higher, he scored a 4 or 5 on every single one of those exams. Mostly 5s. I think it was only 1 4 overall. One of the other stats that's out there is one that I was really kind of excited about this year. As we look at it, it's called AP Excellence. And what AP Excellence is, it's earning a 3 or better on at least 1 AP exam. And as we look at the chart that's up there, what this depicts is, if we look at our junior class, for example, in 2018, that 29.8% means that 29.8% of the students enrolled here at Lincoln Way earned a 3 or better on at least 1 AP exam. So if we take that throughout all 4 years here at Lincoln Way, and our graduating class of 2018, 40% of our graduating class earned a 3 or better on at least one AP exam. That means that they earn college credit here at Lincoln Way. Truly an awesome feat. And if you think about what that 40% represents, that's 700 of the approximately 1,700 students here at Lincoln Way earn college credit here at Lincoln Way. The other way that our students earn a little bit of college credit is through our dual credit courses. We offer, this past year we had college writing and personal finance, and you can see 763 students completed the dual credit courses that we hold in conjunction with JJC, and through that they've earned approximately another $1.2 million. So you put those two together. You take our AP success, you take our dual credit success, put those two together, and our students this past year earned about $5.5 million in college credit and college tuition. So it's really exciting times as we get ready to roll into our next school year. Our teachers that are teaching AP are chomping at the bit, ready to look at the data and look at the results from last year, see how they can improve and help our students even more as we continue on into the 18-19 school year.
Do you know how many freshmen are taking the new course where they can take the AP test this year? That's exciting too.
There's quite a few. I don't have the exact number on me, but I can definitely get that to you.
No,
it is the replacement of our Western Civ Honors class, so the numbers pretty much stayed the same. So we're looking forward to having some great opportunities for our freshmen.
At least 3 sections in each building.
Yes.
Yeah. So close to 100 students.
Yeah, great experience.
Yep.
Good.
Any other questions?
Great.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
He just keeps going.
All right, great. So today I want to update you a little bit on a document that was presented to the Board of Education back at the beginning of the 16-17 school year, and that's our technology plan that Cheryl Kay and I were able to put together and present to you. But what I really want to mention before we really get too deep into this is how much Cheryl Kay has put into this technology plan and the efforts that she has done. It's truly remarkable. She is truly very instrumental in making sure that this technology plan has come to fruition and things that we put on here have really come through. So as we take a look at it, I'm not going to go over all of it because that would take us a really long time, and I don't think we want to spend that much time, but you have it in your backup material. What I'd like to highlight is just kind of a couple things from each year. In 2015, 2016, the main highlight was Skyward. It was our first year. We were really implementing both the financial and student side of Skyward, and it was a large undertaking for switching both of the information systems in a single year. It was very successful, and it's much more user-friendly than our previous student financial information system. This also began the year of the replacing of our aging equipment. Prior to that, we really hadn't had much opportunity to spend a lot of money on technology, and this year was the year that we were doing everything we could to update laptops, refurbish our own laptops, do it all on our own, bring it all in-house, do as much as we can so we can get the proper devices in the hands of our students and our teachers. So that began the process, and we were able to get a couple laptops for our teachers by the end of the year that we were able to put into production. In 2016, 2017, there was tons of training in the world of Skyward, both on the student side and the financial side. That just continues on from year to year. We looked at the wireless infrastructure throughout the district, and we increased our access points in the buildings and made sure that every single classroom in every area that students were going to be learning had an access point that our students could get access to. So that in a classroom, at that point in time, we made sure that we could handle up to 90 devices in every single classroom. So we really worked hard at getting that taken care of during the 16-17 school year. The other thing that we started towards the end of that year was the migration into Office 365. And if you're familiar with Office 365, which I hope at this point you are, what it is, it's a cloud environment, very similar to the Google environment, but Microsoft. We went with Microsoft because that's what our platform is. That's what we have here at Lincoln Way. That's what our students are used to. It's what our teachers are used to. It's what they were very comfortable with. So we started migrating everything over to Office 365, which created emails for our students. It created the opportunity for our students to have free downloads of the Microsoft Suite. It just really created a nice opportunity for us to go into the cloud environment. During this past year, we had a nice opportunity to be able to provide all of our teachers with brand new laptops. Again, those laptops were aging, and they were anywhere from new to 9 years old up until this year. Now our teachers all, this past year, they all had new laptops. Also, throughout this past year, we began a pilot of one-to-one. At the beginning of the 17-18 school year, we started with 10 teachers who, I'd like to say volunteered, but we had to kind of coerce them to join in on this initiative of a one-to-one pilot. So we started with 10. We had 10 teachers that were really, we got them interested, and we're kind of like, one-to-one, I don't know where we're going to go, how do I do it? So we did a lot of training with them, and we were able to work with them to get comfortable so that by the time the first semester was over, that number jumped from 10 to 24 classroom sets. This past year, we ended up operating 24 different teachers with 32 laptops in their classrooms, which equates to about 750 laptops that we introduced into the learning environment this past year. Overall, those teachers have really done an awesome job in creating a one-to-one environment and using the technology with a purpose. That's the main thing that we pushed throughout this whole initiative of trying to figure out what is one-to-one, why does the school district want to go one-to-one. We kept talking to our teachers and saying, listen, we're going to provide you with these devices. If you don't use them today, that's fine. We want you to make sure that you're going to be using the devices with a purpose. Too many times we've seen school districts that hand over an entire class or 2 classes of students with laptops, and the teachers don't know what to do with them. And we watch them and they sit. And the school districts that we've talked to, we share with what we've been doing, like, man, I really wish we would have done something similar to what you did. And our teachers appreciate it. They appreciate the slow approach that we're going with regards to figuring out if this is the right thing for them to learn. So that brings us up to this year, the 18-19 school year. This year, at the end of last year, we actually sent out a survey to see who would want to participate in a one-to-one pilot. We had over 100 teachers fill out the survey that are wanting to participate and be part of this pilot. Now, again, remember what I said. In just less than a year's time, I was pulling people into participating. I had to beg and borrow and steal and get them and say, you're going to be awesome at this. And now I have to turn people away. I have to turn teachers away that are super excited about it. They've got a plan. And a lot of things that have happened that are allowing us to really go forward with this is a lot of our curriculum is already digital. We've created our math curriculum. It's all digital. Our reading curriculum is digital. Our biology curriculum that we're going into has a digital component to it. Our world history program is going to have a digital component to it as well. And obviously our English classes, they're on computers constantly. They're trying always to get into the computer labs and utilize the laptops. So we're getting really, really close, and our teachers are really excited about the possibility of moving in that direction in the future. So again, this year what we have is we have 51 carts of 32 laptops. It's about 1,600 laptops that we're going to have introduced into our learning environment during the 18-19 school year. One of the other things that's on this one is upgrading of classroom projectors. We're going to continue to do that as projectors kind of fade out and the bulbs die. If they're at a point now where the bulbs are almost more expensive than replacing the projectors themselves, and we want them to make sure that they have the most up-to-date and current technology that works well with our laptops and our laptop environment. Over the next couple of weeks, Sheriff Kay and I are going to sit down together again, update the plan. We look at this on a regular basis. Things that we keep on our radar is the future of one-to-one at Lincoln Way, the replacement of our aging fiber infrastructure, and the updating of our wireless network for the potential increased traffic that will be created if we do eventually go one-to-one. So we talk about it. Cheryl and I talk about this almost on a daily basis, figuring out what's next, where are we going, what's happening, what do we need to do now. One of the other things that we've talked about over the past couple of years is our strategic plan, right? And we talked about the strategic plan, and there was the technology component of that strategic plan. And so what I did here is I kind of updated, put a couple notes next to what we put together with that plan. So we created a technology plan that identified fiscal needs and has its ultimate vision to prepare students for college life and career readiness. Those are things that we're doing by implementing the one-to-one environment, by implementing the Office 365 product. We really are trying to help our students prepare for life after Lincoln Way. It talks about creating a life cycle. Our life cycle is very dependent upon what direction we as a district and you as a board decide for us to go, whether we go one-to-one or if we continue on the same path that we're at with individual classroom carts throughout the district. So that'll have a huge impact on the life cycle of our equipment. As we look further down, develop and explore and maintain an infrastructure to support the needs. We talk about our infrastructure, again, Cheryl Kay and I talk about it constantly. We monitor it almost every day. We make sure that the bandwidth is appropriate for a school district our size with the number of users that are on our network. We talk about our disaster recovery. What we are very happy with right now is that most of our applications are cloud-based, are web-based. So they're housed outside of the walls of Lincoln Way. What we do have here that's housed at Lincoln Way, we do have recovery for at one of the other campuses. So if something were to happen here at Lincoln Way Central, we'd be able to go and apply all the backups that we have located at one of our other buildings. So disaster recovery, we've got everything prepared. It's just a matter of us getting the equipment and making sure that the equipment is ready to roll. So again, the technology is ever changing, which is why Cheryl Kay and I and our team, we talk about it almost on a daily basis. We update the plan as often as we can. We look to see how we can implement things and help things out as we continue moving forward. Any questions?
I do think this is an important area, and as we've kind of, this was put together at 2016, a little different environment, things have improved a little bit. I think we should spend some more time this year on deciding, what, if we're going to go one-to-one or what benefits and how we can roll this out to more. Because I know it sounds great, 50 teachers, but there's 400 teachers.
Yes,
So
that's on the agenda for this year, is to develop different focus groups amongst our faculty and staff. We've done a number of comparisons with other districts. We will be ready to make a recommendation to the board and have those discussions throughout this school year.
Yeah, because if we keep buying laptop carts as opposed to doing a lease with a company where they will replace them and then their kids actually can take them home, I think we're just putting money into things that are going to be outdated, where if you do the lease, those companies give you new ones every 2 years, every 3 years, every 4 years, depending upon the terms of the lease. So.
And as we know, one of our biggest deterrents for our technology over the last several years have been our financial situation.
Yeah.
So now as we continue to stabilize, that is the discussion for this year, and bring back some options to the board.
Do we have a time frame for when that will occur?
Dr. Murphy?
So, that's definitely something that we talk about. We work with the teachers that are piloting our one-to-one. We meet with them quarterly, if not more, to talk about how things are going and what they would like to see as we continue to build this out. We can definitely update you. I'd say, end of this first semester, beginning of second semester, there could be an update as far as where we're at and the investigation that we've done up to that point.
The discussions will be freshmen only, freshmen, sophomores, how the actual rollout, what additional support staff will cost. So those are all the variables that we're taking into account at this time. But I do think by the close of the first semester, we will have this back in front for consideration as we move into the second.
And like you
I
said,
think you have to,
sorry, go ahead.
I just think you have to take into account we now have this budget calendar of how we're going to plan going forward. I think
Correct.
we have to make sure that this comes in advance of those discussions.
And how to allocate that cost in terms of a number of districts. Essentially the student pays for the lease over the first 3 years, and so there are many options that we'll bring back.
No, they don't. Pay for a portion of it. My district, they do.
A neighboring district, free.
Anything else, Dr. Murphy? If not, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, next on our agenda is the consent agenda. The consent agenda this evening consists of approval of minutes from the June 21st, 2018 meeting, approval of the closed meeting minutes from the June 21st, 2018 meeting, approval of payroll for July 5th, 2018, July 20th, 2018, approval of 2018-2019 hazardous busing, recertification, and out-of-state travel. Does anybody wish to have any of these items pulled and discussed separately?
Yes.
Which one?
The hazardous busing certification.
Poll number 4 at the request of member Jettie. Any other items? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept items 1, 2, 3, and 5 on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, vote please.
I'm sorry. The vote is open. The vote's unanimous, the motion passes.
Item number 4 was pulled from the consent agenda, so right now I would entertain a motion to approve the busing recertification as presented in your package. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion. Chris, I would say a question or two.
My question is, what is this telling me? Brad, go ahead.
So annually, the school district must present and approve by the board any areas that are considered hazardous based on the IDOT calculations, which would be, there's quite a bit, speed of traffic, railroads, a whole other things. This list is
No
not-
sidewalks.
Right, yes, which would impede walkers walking that are a mile and a half or less. Okay, this is the same list that we've had last year, the year before. These hazards have not changed. There's no additional way for students to walk to school in these areas, and so we do transport them. If the board does not approve the hazardous areas, then we don't get state aid for those students we transport. So this is complying with the law. If the board agrees and certifies these areas upon Mike's recommendation based on the IDOT calculations, then the state will count that students and it'll go towards our state aid.
Anything else? Any other discussion or questions regarding? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Call for a vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous, the motion passes.
Thank you, Brett. Appreciate that. Next are action items. First one is presentation of invoices for June 2018.
Motion to approve the invoices in the amount of $3,974,202.26 dated August 2nd, 2018.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any additional discussion?
Just on the transportation reimbursements to the districts, 2 questions. Were those in the prior fiscal year? The 109,000 to Summit Hill and 158,000 plus to Frankfurt?
Yes, they were.
And did we have to reimburse anyone else, New Lenox or?
We had 2, right, so we had 2 reimbursements and 2 were people owed us. So we got the bills out to get it squared up, just how fast they could process or us processing, so.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, because this bill list went over fiscal years, and I didn't, those are large amounts. I want to make sure that they weren't, when we go over the budget and everything, I want to make sure that they were in the prior, they're already accounted for in fiscal year 18.
Correct.
Any other questions, comments? We have a motion and a second. Call for a vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous, the motion passes.
Thank you. Next is approval of the treasurer's report for June 2018. I'd entertain a motion to accept the treasurer's report as presented in your package. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Brad.
Yes, so for June 30th ending, we ended the year very strong on revenue flows. We had just over 34 million of revenue while expending 8.6 million in expense. Our actual cash was 29 million, just over that, including still outstanding 9 million of tax anticipation warrants, which we have a pay down schedule that we pay down on. At the end, this is resulting in, if you remember in these reports, normally this number is set negative, but resulting in a positive fund balance of 20.3 million as we come into the end of the year. This would include our accounting for our warrants and our loans. As far as the actual financials, we ended the year very strong. We ended the year with a $8 million operating surplus, or a all funds $7.6 million surplus. Most of this is to do with the additional state aid and strong income tax collection. As far as state aid, the new evidence-based funding model is more advantageous for the district. We fell into the second tier of funding. That's been good. Plus, the state made good on some payments that they owed us from prior years. So all those total, we had 2.7 million more in revenue than was previously budgeted. As far as tax receipts, that's on operating. This is all on the operating side, like with excluding debt and capital. On the tax collection, because of the change in federal law, people paid their taxes sooner, so we collected a larger June payment. So we had 927,000 of additional revenue from local taxes. All total, we had a budget variance of 4.58 million, positive variance. As far as expenditures goes, we did a great job there. We actually under-expensed our operating budget by 742,000. Part of that was in salaries, and then just sprinkled benefits in 2 other areas. So all total, $5.3 million positive budget variance, meaning we beat or ahead of the budget all across. All of that being said, doesn't have to remind, we did begin the fiscal year with a negative $256,000 operating fund balance deficit. So this 8 million puts us in the right direction. We should end the year at a positive operating fund balance of 7.8 million, which is moving us in the right direction. With that, I'd answer any questions.
The only one you didn't touch on was the 644,000 in additional local revenue. What is that?
It's made up of several different things. Food service, well, let's see, let me go to my thing. So if you break it down, so we had 93,000 of additional investment income. We had 33,000 of additional fees from students. I had mentioned 45,000 from food service. Of course, we had that boiler reimbursement. So that's other local. And then we did have elementary payments that we had to make back because we'd actually collected more. So those had to go back out. But that all nets out to the 644,000. So.
And the 1.2 million, that's a timing because we're cash basis. That's already, is that reflected in the budget we're going to be looking at coming up here?
Yes, it is. So the number Mr. Ricchetti is referring to, we're talking about all funds now. When I was talking operating, I said 900,000. If we flip to the first page, all funds, we collected $1.2 million ahead of where we normally would be collecting. So what we have to do when we're preparing the budget is we look at collecting the remaining 2017 or 2018 taxes, and then we'll look at collecting the first of the next. So, and we did account for that.
The new state aid formula that gave us a bump this year, how are we probably discuss it in the budget, but will that stay flat? Are you using the current formula across the board going forward?
We're using the current formula going forward. We're assuming it to be flat. They've still yet to finish calculating out and giving us our final numbers, but you'll notice when I talk about the budget, it's actually 11% less than what we collected this year because they rolled in, now it covers 5 old categories, and they owed us money on on 4 of the 5 categories they owed us money, which they made up, and so that's why we'll actually be 11% lower, but it's flat from a evidence-based funding perspective.
I think it's important to know, because we're always looking for what the progress is, and, final scores will be calculated by the ISBE, I think in the spring, but this should move us, because our fund balance to revenue ratio is one of the 5 ratios on that financial profile summary, and that going positive should move us off from financial watch to financial early warning, so we should be moving off the financial watches.
And the amount of short-term debt outstanding, we made it under one more category up on that one too, so that'll help out. Cash on hand, we're still, but we're making progress.
Thank you, Brad.
Brad, from where we were 3 years ago, thank you and your team and Kelly and Dr. Tingley. It's definitely a positive and refreshing look. Thank you.
Welcome.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion or questions? Hearing none, call for a vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the approval of the student activities report for June 2018. Entertain a motion to accept the student activities report as presented in your package.
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
The vote is open. The motion is unanimous. The motion passes.
Next, our personnel reports, employment. Rob.
Good evening. Under employment, we have Eric Lantero, special services teacher, Jonathan Pajak, speech pathologist, Emily Rush, reading teacher, Morgan Sloma, permanent substitute, Jennifer Klee, nurse, Ivana Dignan, bus driver, Denise Hauver, paraprofessional, Daryl Thomas, bus driver, Kelly Voss, food service, Ben Zabricki, paraprofessional, and Mary Utonis, paraprofessional. I support to approve the employment report as presented.
Entertain a motion to approve the employment report as presented.
So moved.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, call for a vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Rob?
Under retirements, Janet Paganesi has requested to retire under the IMRF retirement system. I support to approve this retirement as presented.
Entertain a motion to approve the retirement report as presented.
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, vote, please.
The vote is open. I'm sorry. Mr. Chandler? Okay. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Next, Rob.
Resignations. Under resignations, Jennifer Zarek, school nurse, Kayla Manthai, paraprofessional, Cassandra Bowl, paraprofessional, Mike Badjak, maintenance, Jacob Bernard, paraprofessional, Ashley Sturba, family and consumer science teacher, and Amy Knight, secretary. I support to approve these resignations as presented. Oops, sorry, hold off. Okay, one more to go for that one. My mistake. Under leaves, Linda Agnats has requested to take a sabbatical for the 2018-2019 school year. I ask the board to approve these personnel recommendations as presented.
Entertain a motion to accept the resignations and leaves as presented.
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second, any discussion or question? Hearing none, vote please.
Vote is open. The vote is unanimous, the motion passes.
Thank you, Rob. Next is the District 843 fiscal year 2019 budget. I'd entertain a motion to approve the tentative budget as presented in your package.
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion regarding this budget?
Maybe this is our tentative budget.
Right, that's what I was- So we're just.
So this goes out to all the member districts.
Right.
And if all approved in August, then that budget would be approved, I believe, the first meeting in September, correct? So this is their tentative budget. If all the other joining districts approve, then it's approved in September.
And just the districts have to approve it, it doesn't have to be posted or.
No,
This is-
there's, go ahead, Ron.
Because they don't, levy taxes or we have to have TAWs, they're funded by the member districts, the 5 member districts. So each 5 will vote on it, and collectively, if it's approved, then we, the governing board, will vote on it at our first meeting in September. Overall, the money that's being expended at $639,000 is because, again, it's not funded by levies and TAWs. It's funded by the members, so that's a refund that's going to go back proportionally to what the member districts put in. Overall, they went out for bid, it's $50,000 savings in workers' comp, $24,000 in maintenance they're saving by going out for bid, by not doing buses this year, purchasing them $250,000. Overall, it's a reduction. Our percents for salaries, other than the one who's at a mandated retirement at 5%, we're between CPI 2.1 and 3%. So we're as fiscally conservative, trying to be as much as we are here. Each district is assuming that responsibility.
On the second page, as you can see, our overall increase is budgeted at less than 1%.
Any other questions regarding the 843 budget? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Call for a vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ron, for your vote. Next is the designated assistant superintendent of business, CSBO, to prepare fiscal year 2019 tentative budget. Talk us a little bit through it.
So this is a formality, it's already done. Go ahead, Brad.
Well, it's required by law, so,
Yeah.
somebody else wants to prepare, that's fine.
Do we need a motion?
Yes.
Yeah, we would need a motion, it is a formality.
So it's like prevailing wage or any of these things that we do annually.
I know Joe Costa really wanted to do it. He's been lobbying me all week. All right. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Vote is open. The vote is unanimous, the motion passes.
Next on the agenda, establish fiscal year 2019 budget hearing date.
And that date would be on September 20th. So we will have one more meeting between now and that date. We will present the budget this evening, but once again, it will be on the agenda as an information item for the meeting on the 30th. The board can bring back any questions, concerns, and then we would actually schedule the hearing during the board meeting on the 20th day of September.
August 30th is the budget.
Workshop.
Workshop, yes. So presentation tonight, questions, concerns, then once again on August 30th, correct?
We will need to put the budget on display by the 20th, but knowing that the board can adjust the budget even the night that they vote on it. The board has the legal authority to adjust the budget. So it's just, but it needs to be on display by August 20th to meet that 30 days.
Makes sense.
I'll entertain a motion to establish the budget hearing date. There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any additional questions or comments? Hearing none, call for a vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Next is the paper bid. Entertain the motion to accept the paper bid as presented in your package. There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second, now discussion, sorry.
Okay, so we're doing it a little different this year. You know, we've kind of had a co-op going for a number of years, and we go together, we all order a big bulk of paper. For us, that wasn't the right thing, I felt like, for this year. You know, maybe we might go back to it in years in the future, who knows? We definitely want to try this. We were experiencing paper quality problems, mainly to do with the storage, because you buy all this paper, and we store it for a whole year, and then, you know, sometimes it just isn't working as well as it needs to be in the machine. So, and we also have a good amount of supply still on hand. So what we're doing is we went out to bid with an estimated amount, but it's not a guaranteed amount, it's an estimated amount. We're going to take the paper in smaller orders as needed, where we can store it inside in controlled environment. And so we also bidding out 2 different types of paper. We have our high production machines. So we have 2 high production machines in each building. Those machines are a little more finicky. And so we're bidding out what we call this, you know, higher quality B paper. And that will be only supplied to those machines. The regular paper will just go through the machines, just the common copier. They run at a lower speed, they can handle more, you know, not as high grade paper, if you will. So we, excuse me, the lowest bidder, after discussing deliveries and other questions, and, you know, they decided to withdraw. So then went to the second lowest, which is Veritech, which I'm recommending. Had good discussions with them. I've actually used them in a prior district. I feel comfortable. Go ahead and contracting with them and move ahead. I will say this week I got an email from the third lowest vendor, you know, cautioning me that, you know, have I done my due research and, you know, with Veritech, blah, blah, blah. I feel like I have, and we're ordering, you know, pallets at a time, so if there's any concern, we can certainly adjust. We're not like we're getting in a whole semi-load at once. So I'd recommend we move ahead with this bid as presented.
Why did Premier Paper, did they give you any indication of why they withdrew?
It really boiled down to verifying, you know, what exact paper they're going to be providing us. I mean, it's, you know, in our bid specs, you had to send samples of the actual paper you're going to run. And when it got down to them sending samples and confirming that, yes, this sample they're giving us today will be the same sample we'll be buying. Because when you're buying a semi-load at a time, you pretty much guarantee what they're going to quote you at that time you're going to get. When you're buying over a whole year, you want to make sure that, you know, this is the paper we're going to get all year long. They really had trouble committing to the fact that they'd give us the exact same brand all year long. And there's a lot of back and forth. Finally, they just said, we don't want it because, you know, it's just not worth it for us, you know.
And what were Midland's concerns, or what were they expressing?
Their concern is that the A paper, they say, they just expressed some concerns that make sure I'd researched it and that was really the quality we expected. And yes, we took samples of that paper, we ran it through our machines, our copy lady said it ran fine. So, you know, they're one of the things they're saying, well, it's not as bright white. Yeah, you know, okay, well, we looked at it, it's fine. We ran the actual paper, and so we feel comfortable that that paper will be fine.
And the
inventory we currently have now, we're having problems with it running it through our machines.
Running it through the big machines. It's going through the smaller copiers fine, but the problem we're having is with the high-speed machines, those things are clicking off 100 and some pages per minute. And so it's just, you know, you've got to have that paper good and, you know, that needs tweaking in it, and otherwise you jam up on it.
So by storing it long term, it's picking up moisture.
Right. So we're going to, and by being able to order like this, is other way for us to manage our inventory a little tighter. You know, we're not going to order an ounce of paper until we burn through everything we can. You know, we're just going to really cut it down, so.
Will this have any savings from the way we've done it in the past?
It might, you know, I mean, the actual, well, it's tough because the paper's gone up substantially. So either we're buying a semi-load, I'd be telling you tonight, the paper's costing more today than it did a year ago. So the paper is costing more, but we are going to be anticipating buying less. You know, we've got paper still stored in north, we're going to be bringing over and use. And so we're going to use every last bit we have, especially colored. We got a lot of different color paper. We're going to continue to push down on that so we have it all used.
Technology should continue to decrease the amount of paper that we use.
Right.
Do you know how many reams we have on inventory right now? It says we need 14,000.
Right. We've got an inventory. I couldn't tell you what that is, but we've just finished inventory throughout the whole district. So I've got that, but I couldn't tell you what it was.
Any other questions? Now we have a motion and a second to accept the bid as presented in your package. Call for a vote, please.
Vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Final action item or policy second reading.
As you can see in the policy manuals, superintendent's notes, there are very few policies that are changed, mostly just policy updates, minor style change, footnotes and cross-references have been updated.
Entertain a motion to accept the policy second readings as presented in your package.
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments regarding? Call for a vote, please.
The vote is open. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, next, our financial presentations and discussions. Brad, first one, fiscal year 2019 tentative budget.
Thank you. All right, tonight's presentation is a general overview of the fiscal year 2019 budget. The detailed budget books are at your desk for your review. As Dr. Tinley already mentioned, this is the first of two presentations before the scheduled adoption on September 20th. So we should have ample time for discussion and questions as we move forward. If you do have other questions, you get home, you're late at night reading this, just feel free to email, not call, but email me, we can deal with it later. All righty.
Texting purposes?
Yeah, text, yeah. All right. And just as a general note, unless, because I want to make sure, but this entire presentation will be based on all funds and not just the operating funds as we sometimes do when we talk about the 5CAS, unless otherwise specifically noted. So if the slide's not labeled, it is all funds. So when you look at the fiscal year 19 budgeted revenue versus 18 actuals, you'll see that we're going down 2.8 million or 2.52%. This is mainly to do with the strong tax collection, because we have to make that up now. We're going to be collecting less than 19. And then, of course, as I already mentioned, we're down 11% on our evidence-based funding. Budgeted expenditures over last year's actuals are up 4.78% or 4.9 million. For all funds, we're estimating a $47,000 surplus. Now that would have been higher if we wouldn't have had such a strong tax collection. So when we say we had a $7.6 million surplus in the prior year, part of that surplus is, if things would have came in kind of even Steven, we would have been talking about a $5.7 million surplus all funds last year, and we'd be talking about $1 million some surplus all funds this year. But the taxes came in early. At the end of the day, fund balance will all wash it out. We have an estimated operating surplus of $2.8 million, which does meet Board Policy 420, where we say we will annually have at least a 3% surplus to go to rebuild our fund balances. Estimated ending fund balance of $20.7 million. Operating fund balance estimated to be 10.6, or right at 12% of our expenditures. As you know, in the budget development process, we very, very closely align that with our 5-year financial forecast, that we've been working through that. Then it's adjusted for actual 2018 results. It's also adjusted for our final staffing plans, principal input, and of course fully funding of our capital improvement plan. Just as a side note, in our 5-year financial forecast, we had estimated that our fiscal year 19 expenditures would be $106,553,000. Here, our budget's $106,618,000. It's only $65,000 difference from our 5-cast. Revenue. This is a quick shot, high level of our entire revenue. You can see there, local going down 1.6. I already talked about the state. And the state's going down because in the prior year we collected those extra mandatory categorical payments, which we won't be getting. They've already paid that off. And finally, for all practical purposes, estimating federal revenue is flat. This is a graphical of that. You can see there, local revenue down just a little, state down, and federal flat. The district's total revenue for all funds fiscal year 19 here is on a graph on the board. As you can see from this graph, the district is very dependent on local property taxes, about 76% of all of our revenue. In many aspects, though, this is a very positive attribute. Additionally, 13% of our revenue comes from other local, such as student fees, rental income, and et cetera. Finally, state and federal government, just over 11% comes from those funds. Assumptions built into the budget. Well, as you know, our property taxes, we have 2 levies. Our operating levy, which is capped by BTEL, and our debt service, which is not capped. So debt service is automatically levied, unless the board abates it. As far as the budget goes, we're working on the CPI. So here's the CPIs. For 2017 levy, it was 2.1%. And then for the 2018 levy, it's 2.1%. Now that levy has not been set. We're anticipating the board would set that 18 levy in September, along with adopting the budget. We will be talking about the levy at the August meeting. As far as new growth goes within this budget, we are, for budgeting purposes, planning on $50 million of new growth. However, when we talk about the tax levy, we will actually ask for that to be a little higher, just in case there's additional new growth that we're unaware of. The district is projecting its tax base will continue to recover as it has been. We're estimating a reassessment of about 2.5%, and then moving forward. You can see in 17 it was 2.32. That's current property on the books that was reassessed, or the values increased. This graph here is our total equalized assessed value. I researched our tax records clear back to 2005 to discover that the district's actually high point in EAV, or equalized assessed value, occurred in 2008, where we were at $4.08 billion, yes, that's a B, $1 billion of assessed value. We are projected that our EAB will top that mark by 2019. Overall tax rates are projected to decline slightly based on the 2018 existing home values increasing at 2.5%. You will notice the red lines on the top. That's our non-capped, or our what we call debt service, and those rates are increasing and will be increasing a little bit there in 19, going up about 14 cents. Other assumptions for other local, the corporate personal property replacement tax, we're estimating at $512,000. That is down 8% from the actual. We have adjusted student fees to reflect the new athletic and activity fee. And then finally, the other current, other local pretty much just held flat. State, as you know, evidence-based funding is budgeted at the FY18 allocation, but is 11% lower since we received those back MCAP payments. And it's listed on the screen there. You can see what it replaced. All other budgets pretty much held flat on the other categories. We are anticipating in the other categories that are left that we will get 4 full payments in fiscal year 19. What that means the 1 payment they didn't pay us for last year, and 3 payments they should owe us, and they owe us in 19. We owe us 4, but hopefully we'll get 3. This is a graphical representation of the Ed Fund, which you can imagine mirrors all the funds, as it's the district's largest fund and accounts for 63% of the district resources. Local revenues projected to increase by about $290,000 only, and that's to do with the strong tax collection in the prior year, so we won't be receiving as much in the future. State funding is decreasing by $886,000, as we're only projecting to receive 4 payments, 1 from the prior, 2 or 3 from this year. And basically, federal funding we're holding flat. This is O&M. O&M, we're looking at a small decrease of 2.5%, or $274,000. This is really due to 2 factors. One, rental income for the auditorium has now been recorded in the Ed Fund, since it's more to do with operations than with buildings. And then finally, we're not going to budget for the boiler replacement. This is a comparison to actual. We know we had that replacement last year reimbursed by our insurance. Transportation, local revenue declining by 13%, or $1.2 million. Well, that's a large number, but the biggest part of that is due to a tax shift allocation to other funds, since this fund has had a positive fund balance for many years and has been running a surplus in the past. We are anticipating that state funding will be decreased by about 25%, or $294,000, due to constraint on state resources. Expenditures. This is a all funds overview of the expenditures. We're looking at $106.6 million in all expenditures, or a 4.78% increase, $4.9 million. Of special note is the 111% increase in capital expenditures as the district works to provide full funding for its current capital renewal plan. This is a switch. All the numbers I've been talking about so far have been a actual, 18 actual to 19 budget, but we're going to switch here with this one here. We're going to go budget to budget. This form was requested last year, so I put this together this year in anticipation. So we have a tentative budget of $1.6 million. Last year's original budget was $101 million, an increase of $4.7 million. And it's broken down there by fund, and you can see the tort fund are actually estimating a decrease. So there we go. Now it's also, we broke it down by major type. Of course, 42% of this increase is related to the $2 million increase in our budget for capital expenditures. Followed by that would be 1.3 million in salaries and benefit increase, and then next would be 620,000 of bonded interest. As you follow down through, you will see we have areas of reductions. We are anticipating tax anticipation warrants, even though I'll tell you later interest rates are going up. The amount we need to borrow is going down, so we're going to save about 78,000 there. Unemployment is down, legal fees down, and then there's a myriad of other minor reductions throughout account 290. So there you have our budget to budget comparison between the years. This is a quick graph of overview of all expenditures by object, which you can see increasing there in salaries and benefits. Some other areas are kind of flat. This is a graphical display of the 2019 tentative budget by object, which you can see salaries and benefits, which represent 60% of our overall budget, or 73% of our operating budget, which is a large amount. Bond payments and special ed tuition represent almost 20% of our budget, with the remaining 21% of our budget going to professional services, supplies, capital, and non-capital expenditures. Built within this budget for salaries and benefits are based on the actual contracts with the unions or as per board directive for non-union staff. As far as benefits, in this budget we're holding our health insurance, dental, and vision flat, and the other ones are being increased with the normal customary, with the exception of, and I'll talk about as we get into that individual fund, but IMRF, you know, we paid down that early retirement, ERI, and so that has dropped our rate, and I'll talk about that when we get to that fund. Salaries and benefits, here's just graphing it out. You can see here, based on our current staff and the aforementioned benefits for assumptions for salaries and benefits, the district expects to spend about 1.63 million overall, benefits to increase 1.63% overall, or $1 million net of retiree savings. You can see there, we were down in 17, kind of flat in 18, now we're up a little in 19. This here is total expenditures, net of transfer or without transfers. You can see here we have the last 7 years of actual expenditures with the FY 2019 budget. Expenditures are increasing due to increases in salaries and benefit, bond payments, and capital expenditures. Now looking at the education fund, which represents 61% of the district's expenditures, we're anticipating a $2.3 million increase in that fund, or 3.59%. Of this, salaries and benefits make up $1.4 million, supplies $724 million, and capital $175,000. I'm sorry, supplies $124,000, and capital $175,000. This is a graphical overview of the O&M, which we're projecting to go up 9%, or $760,000. The largest increases are our capital at $586,000 and professional services of $513,000. However, and actually, Mr. Wilkie brought this to my attention. I got out my book to check him. We've been charging our water to supplies, which is where natural gas and electricity is charged. But actually, according to the state budget manual, it should be charged to professional services. So the big shift there is mainly to do with the reclassification of, that's right, water from supplies to professional services. I actually checked the book. I didn't believe it. Finally, transportation overall expenditures are up by 2.84%, or $270,000, due to the increase in salaries and benefits, bus fuel, and supplies. This is a summary of all funds, and you can see here with transfers, we're at $47,000 overall surplus, projected to come in at 20.6 million in ending fund balance, or 19.37% of our overall budgeted expenditures. This is our operating funds. The surplus is estimated to be 2.77 million, or 3.17% of our operating expense, according to policy 420, and brings our operating ending fund balance to 10.58 million, or 12.1%, which I will say is ahead of the goal for policy 420. So policy 420, if you remember a year or so ago, we had, according to the plan, we were needing to be at least 3% by fiscal year 18. You can see we well beat that. We're at 9%. And so we've readjusted the schedule. We're able to shave off 2 years. Originally, we projected we would not be to the 33% fund balance until fiscal year 2028. Now, we could possibly be there by 2026. And that is the budget in a nutshell. Questions?
Greg, we're not including anything about the 191st Street property, correct?
No.
Yep. So
No, ma'am.
so I observed. Thank you. Just wanted to confirm.
The capital projects on the summary of changes, budget to budget sheet we put together was 1.4 million on the first page when we were going over funds, and then 2 million total on the second page. And I'm assuming that's the 600,000 from O&M that's in capital outlay. Is that in there? What is that $600,000 for?
Okay, so the overall plan is for 3.6 million. We needed to bring we spent $1.6 million in the prior year. We needed 2 million. So you're right, it's $1.4 million in Fund 60, and it's 600,000 from Fund 20. And that's because we didn't want to bring our Fund 60 all the way down. So if you look in your budget books, quickly if you want to, if you don't want to, that's fine too. But if you go to Fund 60, that's page 46, you'll see that by the end of fiscal year 19, we're estimating to still have 680,000 in that fund. And so we're only going to be taking or increasing that budget by that 1.4 million. And so, but the list of things we're doing still link back to that $3.6 million capital improvement plan that was approved in the spring. Well, discussed and decided in October, final approval in the spring. We're going to do that different in the future, but that's what the funding is for.
Are we cutting down on our flexibility then by not just spending down the capital projects? Because couldn't you just move money from O&M to capital projects during the year, but you can't do it the other way?
Right, we could transfer from O&M to capital projects, but you can't go from capital projects back to O&M, not in an interfund transfer.
So I'm asking you,
Are we 681, spend it down to 0, and then if we have some surplus, we could transfer it at the end of the year? Is that what you're asking, folks?
Right. I'm just saying, are we cutting down on some of the flexibility by doing it that way? I mean, granted, I was making an argument that we shouldn't spend it down, but that's done and over with. So now I don't think we should limit our flexibility by taking it out of O&M. That would just be,
right.
Unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, so one critical piece, right?
Yeah.
So board policy 420 says we will have a 3% surplus. If I take the additional money, spending it out of, oh wait, you're saying do the reverse.
Right. I'm saying, yeah.
No, sorry, so we'll have a higher fund, a higher surplus. Go ahead and spend down the restricted fund. Well, we could, that's the adjustment that needs to be.
Well, I just want to make sure I'm not missing something, because I think that from a flexibility standpoint, that seems to make.
Right, yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. You'd be spending restricted funds and freeing up unrestricted funds. Because O&M can be transferred to any fund within the district.
So you're saying spend down the 681?
So I'm saying, yes.
You can't move it out of there.
You can't move it out of there.
Right.
You can move stuff in.
If hypothetically a capital asset was disposed of during this fiscal period, Brad, where would we have limits as to what funds we would put that in, or would that be at board discretion?
But that's, I'll just give you my off the cuff, but, obviously we'd want to confirm with our attorney. I would think that any major capital asset that's disposed of would first look at, well, where were the funds that were used to purchase that? If that was a general, then the board could choose to put it in a more restrictive. If it was spent out of a more restrictive, then I'd say the board couldn't choose to go to general, they would need to go to more restrictive. That'd be my feeling. You can always, I would think you can always go more restrictive, but not less.
But based on that, would that impact your recommendation one way or the other? Would we want to vet that based on the asset right now that Chris brought up? Do we know where they came from and what our limitations would be?
Where it was purchased, that was purchased.
Well, let's find out.
Pretty sure operating funds, so that would,
Can we vet that?
yes, we can vet that, I will have that ready.
We get into the budget thing and
Yeah.
determine how the chess pieces run.
I don't think that is an capital project, so that. fund.
No, I get it.
And the other land, I think, didn't we put it back, didn't it go into,
Correct.
Yeah.
Just since we're trying to find out all the variables.
Correct.
what's that?
No, I don't have insomnia.
Okay, well.
I mean, and these don't have to be answered now, but I'm just like looking through on the revenue, and I think you touched on it probably on the rental income moving over to an education fund, but like, how do we get these huge increases in like athletic admissions, other rental income, I guess, where is that coming, could you just explain where that's coming out of, that it's, 400, oh, sorry, page 14 of the.
So I can answer one of those right off. That question about the athletics, that's doing with some more reclassification of funds that were flowing into student activities that after closer review, we've determined should not go into student activities and would need to come into the general fund. So those will be recorded into there and then expended appropriately. Well, they're always expended appropriately, but at least the track within the general fund. So what was your other? Let's see, so rental income.
Like athletic admissions and admissions, other, and rental income.
Right. Well, the athletics, I just add, that's because that was these tournaments.
Okay.
And we're going to be collecting, recording that and then they'll have expenditures accordingly. I'll need to look into admissions others. We can research that.
Rental.
Well, the rental income, that is the auditorium. So if you look at 1910 category, 1910 rental, that $100,000 increase is the auditorium. So we'll be recording that. We set up an individual fund to help track those individual subject within our ed fund to track those, and we're recording the revenue in ed also.
And then where are athletic rentals on, like field rentals?
Okay, so those are in Fund 20 because they're the rental of facilities. So you would go in Fund 20, there, well, if you go to the revenue page, it's easier to see it. That's page 31. So that's under rental revenue on page 31 in 1910. You can see it was 440 this year. It's only 247 next year. That's because we took out that auditorium. The auditorium, the tough thing there is a lot of the You know, it's a kind of a gray, you know, facility rentals go to O&M. Why auditorium not in O&M? Well, because there's a lot of things that go in. There's the equipment, the staff, and that's not O&M. And so we just, for accounting purposes, it's easier to put it into the ed fund.
And then some of these, so going in the education fund, and I'll just use one example. So special education, 1,200. When you're looking at the variance in the actual, the budget on salaries, for example, is this just some more pinpointing of where salaries are actually assigned, or are we actually increasing salaries on special education by 14.5%?
No, this is our, you know, and if you remember last year this time I said, you know, it's a multi-year process. This is more of our refining and defining correctly where everybody's being charged. And so we still had some of that didn't get 100% corrected in the prior year. And so we're working more diligently on that again this year. But it's very critical, especially with special education, that things get, the state wants things charged to a specific function. On a function level, it's critical that things are accounted for according to the Illinois Program Accounting Manual. So that's what that is. It's not a 14% increase in special education.
And then, so 1,500 interscholastics, what falls under there? Is that athletics plus?
Activities.
So activities are included in there? And then, last one for now. You explained the student activities fees, but we had in the budget a transfer of expense from student activities. So are we actually being charged through?
What page are you on?
I'm on your summary sheet. Summary. I don't know where it is in here, but because I don't know if it's, but it's on the second page, about 5 down. Transfer of expenses from student activities, 164,000.
Okay, I'll have to look at that. I'm sorry, I don't have.
No, that's fine.
So I believe, Brad, those were the expenses that had been charged to student activities in prior years will now be moved over to the budget side. Am I correct with that, Brad?
Yes.
That's cool, like we were referring to athletic admission.
Correct. Yeah, these are the things, right?
That would be an expense.
Right.
No, we increased
we're
the
taking away the
revenue and we're increasing the expenditures.
So for instance, they would take a fee for them hosting a wrestling tournament and then turn around and use that amount to pay for a soccer tournament. So rather than having those, both the expense and the revenue on the student activity side, it's being brought onto the budget side.
So it's an increase on the revenue and an increase on the expenditure.
Okay, so there's an offsetting.
Yes.
Right. Entry.
And as Brad said, over the next 3 weeks, any more questions, please email us and we can answer them.
Shoot me an email, I'll update the PowerPoint, we'll have just question and answer. Really, next meeting, we'll just go question and answer. You send me in your questions, I'll get them answered, we can discuss things, you know, and make sure we're ready to go. All right, thank you.
Yeah, it's just going to keep going. Cash flows, Brad?
19 cash.
Yes. Give me 2 seconds. So with the preparation or the first draft of the budget done, we completely put together the cash flows for the district based on the budget. So with the cash flows, the first thing you would notice as you start to go through that we are really maximizing interfund loans. With the estimated increase in interest rate, the longer we can go, having to draw, the better. So you'll notice we're doing some transfers between funds, which is allowed by code, school code. We'll be coming to the board to ask for approval, but those are built into the budget, and we'll just bring them and have them approved. We're estimating that by the highest cash deficit we will need will be about 17 million, which is substantial improvement over the prior year. All indication right now, we've got a firm commitment if the board acts before September 30th from Old Second. They've given us a good, a rate of 2.95% tax exempt. And but there's a 90% probability that the feds will increase rates on September 30th. So if we don't commit prior, there's a chance that the rates would be higher. Also within the assumptions, we're assuming that we'll collect 100% of our revenue. We're assuming we'll expend 100% of the budget, and the inflows and outflows are based on the individual tracking that we've done all this year. So we're kind of the old cash flow we were working off, I've scrapped that. We're going off of how things flew, we're going in 18. So with that, it's in your packet, and answer any questions you have on the cash flows.
It looks good to me. Showing some progress. I mean, we're borrowing less and borrowing over a shorter period of time. I think we had the 2018 one in there. We borrowed, our first draw was in November, and this one we wouldn't draw until January 16th. So, and at the end, we had 9 million outstanding at the end of this year, and this shows we have 2 million outstanding. So that's
right.
Really good.
So to act on those clauses by September 30th at the next meeting?
I'm sorry, what?
It'll be on the 20th, September 20th. Yeah, September 20th. And then, Brad, what will our authorization amounts be with Old Second? I know we're anticipating 17 million. What will the authorization?
You know, I think we'll have a good discussion. I mean, last year we went probably like 3 million over. So as we refine, look at this cash flow one more time, I'd probably come back with all the resolutions set at like 20 million. No, you know, not to exceed 20 million, just to give us that little space. So,
are we going to do the interfund transfer at the next meeting as well?
Yeah, we'll look at them, and as we need them, we'll have them prepared. We'll do them one at a time as they come up, and so we'll be prepared with those. So, I mean, really, if we want to like slide right into the tax anticipation warrants, included in your packets the timeline that we would need to follow. It would be my recommendation, given the high probability that the feds would be looking at another rate increase in September, that we go ahead and get the documents started rolling. We would, you know, the board approved last year working with Ice Miller. They gave us a price for 3 years. So I would like to just go ahead, continue to work with them, get everything together, and then we'll have all that for you guys to start looking at August 30th in preparation for adoption on the 20th. I did confirm with Ice Miller that even though our tax levy would not be technically filed with the county at the time we pass the parameters resolution, as long as it's in the agenda after the adoption of the tax levy, it's okay for us to go ahead and adopt the parameters resolution to borrow on the tax levy. So we'd look to do all of that in September 20th, adopt the budget, adopt the tax levy, and adopt the resolution, parameters resolution for the TAWs, so that we can make a firm commitment with Old Second prior to September 30th rate increases.
Are we still going to be required to, what's it called, escrow?
You know, I didn't discuss that with them. I certainly can. I myself have found that not to be much of an issue for us. I know they like that. It's worked well for us too. I mean, I feel it's kind of a, two-way street. I think it's been okay for us and they like it. I can certainly, if there's a concern, I can approach that with them. I think we certainly have, excellent credit with them. So, I mean, I think if we wanted to remove the intercept, I doubt they would object.
If it's not causing an issue.
Yeah, the intercept is built into the cash flow. I just assumed we would continue with that. So I'm certainly fine with it. Cash flow wise, I think it works okay for us.
Have you had any discussions with any other source other than Old Second?
We haven't. I certainly can. We're certainly, in a better position. We won't have an audited financial by then. And we don't have an upgrade on our rating other than the negative off. But we certainly could take out Steelers from other areas if the board would like for that.
What was the rate last year?
Last year is 1.65 tax exempt, and they're quoting 2.95 this year based on the increases that they've seen with the feds.
Outpaced the Fed.
Yes.
What's that?
They're raising the rate more than the Fed is raising it.
Yeah.
They're assuming
They're already assuming the 30th.
They're
so-
assuming it.
Well, I'd be more than glad to do some more research and actually even, contact some other people if that's what the desire of the board.
Good rate.
I think we have to. I think we have to.
Okay.
I think just to keep things fair.
Right. Yeah, all right.
Not that they haven't been a great partner, and hopefully nobody interprets that we're being disrespectful, but I just think we have to ask.
Okay, I will certainly do that. For the 30th meeting, we'll have some other information for the board to consider.
Can you just also have when we locked last year into that rate? Yeah, what date it was?
We locked last year at the October meeting, remember? So October 13th, I think it was. So but then, the Fed wasn't moving on things, and things are a little more flatter, if you will.
Again, please don't interpret our relationship with them as anything less than. They've been more than fair over the last 3 years. It just needs to,
Right.
I guess I would be concerned by doing this, we run the risk of running out of the source. Well, I mean, if we go start shopping around, maybe Old Second comes back to us, you guys, we've been good to you for 3 years, you're gonna go.
Of a public body. It's not my personal home loan that I
I
can.
understand, but I mean,
no, you're right.
there's not a lot of people that are clamoring to get into this.
Well, that's not necessarily true.
Well, I also think that Old Second understands that we have a fiduciary responsibility to our community. I don't think that'll be an issue, and we have a great working relationship with Old Second, and we do invest as much of our surplus funds with them as we can, and they've been good at rates that way. Notes from the treasurer's report. I'm not concerned at all. I think they would understand. Hey, we have to do our homework too. Okay, we'll have that for the next meeting.
Good questions. Anything else? 5-year financial forecast.
5-year financial forecast. You'll find out I'm an accountant, not an IT person, so we'll see what I can do here.
Brad, do you need a water or anything?
Actually, no, yes.
Been up there for a while.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Are we ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, tonight's presentation is meant to be an interactive process, so please, I know I get rolling, but stop me if you have questions. Let's just talk with them as we're going, and as we're presenting here. So as you know, the 5-year financial forecast, or what we love to call 5cast, is a comprehensive interactive planning tool the district uses in its budget development, tax levy determination, and just general future planning. It's an interactive planning model with hundreds of assumptions that affect the model's output. As you know, the longer the planning horizon, the less certain the results will be, as events that affect the district's financials are always changing. This is an interactive tool, though, and we can prepare what we call what-if scenarios based on changes in assumptions. Tonight, we'll look at only 2 scenarios, what I call the base scenario and the worst scenario. What 5cast is not a static document that will remain unchanged in the future. In fact, the 5cast model needs to be an ever-evolving model, or it will become worthless in guiding the district's future. The elements that drive the projections are listed here on the screen and are provided to PMA, which loads them into the 5cast software. Please note, different from the budget, all graphs here will focus on the operating funds, which are Ed, O&M, transportation, IMRF, working cash, and tort, excluding debt service and capital projects, unless I specifically loop one of those in, and I'll tell you when they are. The software has 2 major calculators. These calculators, the first on the revenue side, calculates out our taxes. It calculates out 72% of all the revenue in the projections. And the other is the calculator for salaries and benefits, which calculate out 73% of the expenditures. The remaining revenue and expenditures are adjusted in the model by manual input based on the appropriate assumptions. So the base model. This is the operating funds revenue for 2019 original budget here on the screen. As you can see, as I mentioned earlier, the district is very dependent on property taxes, which is a positive thing, 72%. The district's current operating budget is a key building block for the forecast and is assumed to accurately reflect district operations. As you've already mentioned in the budget, we have 2 types of levies we collect. We have our tax levy that's capped, our operating levy, or we have our debt service, which is collected unless abated. Here is the Consumer Price Index, which is the single largest revenue assumption within the 5cast model, since it controls the estimated increase in 72% of the district's revenue. For fiscal year 2019, so right here, the district will rely on about 50% of the 2017 tax. Wait, am I saying that correctly? Yes, 2017 tax, which was set in October, and 50% of the 2018 tax levy, which is based on the December 17 CPI of 2.5. What we put in here for our projections, we projected out, we've got 9 years of history here, green bars. The orange bars are the Wall Street Journal's projections at that time. And then finally we got our blue bars, which is our projections, and the purple bars are our projections, and the blue bars are the Wall Street economist projections in the future. So you can see for levy year 19, which will be based on the 2018 CPI, we're projecting 2.51. Okay, that's high, higher than in prior. Right now, as of June 2018, the year-over-year CPI is 2.9. So they're anticipating a little lag as we go into the last of the year. The second key factor in predicting revenue is the district's new property growth. As I mentioned in the budget presentation, we will continue with $50 million in the future. The district received $52 million of new property growth this last year, which generated about an additional $1 million in tax revenue. I already spoke about the EAB, and we're projecting that by 19 we will beat our historical prior high in 2008. This graph, unlike the one and the other, this reflects the total change in equalized assessed value, which includes new property and property reassessment. You can see in 17 we had an actual 3.74, and we're projecting 3.81 in 18. What is this projection? This projection actually only affects our tax rate, as the district actually levies in whole dollars. So as our property values go up, if our tax levy is lower than the percentage increase in the EAB, then our tax rate declines. And we are seeing that here. So you see we're estimating a small decline in the 2018 actual tax levy. As I already spoke earlier, we're looking at holding the corporate personal property tax flat at $512,000. We've adjusted for students. Interest income, we expect interest income to continue to increase in the district at a rate of about 15% as we anticipate increased rates and increased fund balance, except for Fund 60 where we're expending. Food service, we expect revenue to be up 3%, and basically all other areas have been held flat. State and federal, we anticipate not much change in the evidence-based funding. We're just looking at it to be fully funded and at the fiscal year 18 level, which is 11% lower than what we collected this prior year. As far as the other categoricals, we're looking at those to remain pretty much flat, along with the federal revenue. This is a graphical representation of the district's operating funds by major revenue source. You can see that local resources will make up about 89% of our total funding throughout this time, throughout this projections. We expect operating revenue to be at right at $104 million by 2024. Now, given our ever-changing environment, it's prudent for us that we should investigate the sensitivity of assumptions within the model and determine the impact of any one of these changes on the model. Literally, we could run thousands of what-if scenarios to try and model all possible assumptions. However, the best way, though, is just to look at a sensitivity analysis and determine the importance of each variable within the model. Listed here are the three largest revenue variables within the model. So for each 1% change in CPI, up or down, that's a $670,000 change. Now that is split over 2 fiscal years because we collect half the levy in one and half in the other. So we're predicting 2.5% CPI for 19. Well, what happens if it's really only 1.5? Well, that'd be $670,000 less in revenue split over 19 and 20. Just as with revenue, the original operating budget is the key building block on the expenditure side. This chart here is the representation of that, in which you can see 73% of the district's expenditures are within salaries and benefits, making those assumptions paramount within the expenditure projections. All salary and benefit assumptions are based on actual individual staff contracts, adjusted for known retirements, union contracts, historical changes, or other changes as determined by the Board of Education. Mainly speaking on benefits, we're anticipating the 19 to be flat and then 3% increase thereafter. As far as overall teaching staff, we're -2 FTEs in fiscal year 19, and would expect to have a -2 in fiscal year 2020 with flat thereafter. This is the operating expenditures graph here. You can see the increases there. Based on slightly declining staffing and all of the aforementioned salaries and benefit assumptions, the district expects salaries and benefits to reach about $70.7 million by fiscal year 2024. This is graphed here. Additional assumptions, we see we've planned on private education tuition to increase by 3%, District 843 by 3% in the future, natural gas by 2%, and then the shift, $2.2 million shift from the capital fund to the O&M, and special ed transportation up, bus leases up, and finally a reduction, as I mentioned, in the IMRF rate. We'll see that. We anticipate, well, we know we've already got our notice, that's going down 2.38%. And then finally, we've had a reduction in this year's workers' comp, but we're not sure that will continue. We've built in 3% into the future. This is a graphic display of the district's expenditures by major type. So based on all the aforementioned assumptions, the district expects total expenditures to reach about $98.5 million by 2024. And you can see there those yellow lines. So now this is operating, so as it comes from Fund 60, non-operating fund, into an operating fund, you can see the increase in our capital. Sensitivity analysis, same thing. Salaries is the largest item. So for each 1% change in salaries overall, it'll be $537,000 more. For each 1% in health, dental, and life, it'd be $68,000. This is a summary of all assumptions are then accumulated into an individual financial profile or pro forma, which the final aggregate is in the projection files I've given in the board docs, each of the details. I gave the detail for the operating and the summary for the all funds. So remember that when you're looking at the operating, it does not include debt service or capital projects, but the all funds summary does. This is operating, so this is our graph of revenue and expenditures throughout the years. You can see revenue is outpacing expenditures, and we do meet policy 420. This chart graphically displays the cumulative fund balance for all operating funds, the red line, plus the district's estimated low cash point, which is the purple line. You can see there how we're increasing and reducing our dependency on PAWs. The individual bars, which you see running up and down here, they represent the actual individual funds, and you can see them. You can see there the ed fund actually was negative. Now we're coming back positive. The district is projecting by 2024 that the district's operating funds surplus should begin to restore and well into it and reduce our reliance on tax anticipation warrants. This is just a close-up of that actual same graph. This is modeling of fund balance 420 policy. So as you know, we need to have a surplus of at least 3%, and the red line here indicates our 3% and where we're at in achieving above that 3%. This is our fund balance, cumulative fund balance, and with the same thing, fund balance policy 420 graph there by the red line. We're anticipating that our fund balance will increase by over $20 million over the next 5 years while providing adequate financial resources to our students. This is that timeline and goal. According to policy 420, the district's goal is to increase its operating funds balance by at least 3% per fiscal year, and we've established this following timeline to meet that. Please note that this timeline will be updated each time we get audited actual results. So, like in this year where we beat it, we would then, if we did better in 19, it'd be updated, and 3% we'll keep shaving off as we move ahead. Finally then, we want to move into what I call the worst case, and it's, I don't know, I guess some people, anyway, it might not be the absolute worst case. I'm sure I could have made it worse, but it's certainly look at how it could be. So, no changes in expenditures. Why is that? Well, because we're in control of expenditures, and so we can adjust here or there where we need to make sure we hit within what we have budgeted for. As far as revenue then, that's where it's beyond our control, especially the further we get out. So the change in CPI, prorating of evidence-based funding at 93%, but then no other changes in the revenue stream. So we did, in this one, we could model different ones, and I would open for whatever the board would like to model. We just modeled out at 2.1% flat. So what's that view? Under this model, the assumptions, the district operating fund is projected to hit 26.62%, or about 3.8% below fund policy 420 by 2024. So we will be under the board's policy. This is a graph of revenue and expenditure. While operating revenue exceeds expenditure, it does not exceed expenditures to the amount needed to meet the board's goal of 3%. So in that case, we would need to be looking at making some adjustments in expenditures in order to meet that goal. This is a graphic of that thing, one of our actual fund balance. This is the actual surpluses graphed against the district's fund balance 420. You can see in fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 20 and 21, the district does not make the individual years 3%. What that does do is it also throws us off on the accumulative. Now, of course, we would make adjustments, so we made sure we did, but if we didn't, then we'd be in what you call catch-up mode. And so then it would be difficult. We would then be on a cumulative basis. We'd be off in fiscal year 19, or we'd only be on in fiscal year 19 and 24, or all the other years we would not be to the 3% threshold. Okay, questions on the 5-cap?
Your worst case scenario held everything flat going forward, right?
Right. CPI.
Would the worst case scenario be 0?
Well, well, I don't know. Maybe I should say called it another option. Because definitely worst case would be, I guess, 0.
I think we just have to work on making it a little more pessimistic in your worst case. But I do think there was value in showing that if you just move down, how very sensitive these long-term models are to the inputs, because you made a very slight adjustment to CPI and moved the state funding from 100 to 93%. So very modest changes. I mean, you're talking 2.5 in CPI to 2.1, 2.34 to 2.1 in those 19, 20, 21, and you fall below that line. So, I mean, I think it does make the point that, you know, this is a very sensitive model to the inputs. If we're going to do a worst case, I think you have to think about like new property growth going back to, you know, not at 50 million, but that goes back down to wherever it hit the low point. And, you know, CPI taking it down a little bit more, probably not to zero, but, you know, taking it down to, you know, maybe 1% or something like that. Something similar to what happened in 2015, 2016. I mean, maybe not even in these couple of years. And I think, you know, the state of Illinois, nothing's going to happen. It's an election year, but I still don't think they have a sustainable budget. So looking at, you know, things that they might throw out there too, like a pension shift or free property tax freeze and stuff like that. I think that's what I would kind of try and model out in the worst case. And otherwise, I mean, we have the sensitivities, but I think in the worst case scenario, you know, you have the teacher's contract would be, you know, potentially have to be renegotiated if there was a pension freeze. So we have that language in there. So, I mean, when I go through a worst case, I think that's what we should.
So I have a question about the CPI, the Wall Street Journal, their estimates. Is there any other entity that really estimates CPI?
You know, I'm not aware of any, but I certainly research it.
I'm not aware of any either.
There are a multitude of places that forecast inflation, CPI, whatever you want to put on it. So you're just picking at it. Brett, I would go, I mean, worst case scenario, and I'm going to be Debbie Downer here, I guess. We've run a 10-year expansionary economy. We're due for a recession. You were using the 90% of the Fed increase when you were pitching TAWs. There's percentages of when some type of recessionary impact will hit our economy. I think that's what you need to look at when you're building a worst case scenario. Now, again, it's a percentage. I get it. It's a guess. But this thing now has it running into 2024 with no real retraction. And I'd like to think you're right, but I think that when we get to that worst case scenario, especially when, you know, Chris brought up earlier tonight, things like capital outlay, other things that may create commitment over a longer period of time. Because of how locally we are dependent on local, or how dependent we are on local property taxes, we just need to know. And it's going to happen. It's not a question of if, it'll be when. And I know we've had conversations with you and Dr. Tingley about watching certain indicators. So that's what I would suggest in the worst case scenario, is build in a recessionary type scenario.
Okay.
Not necessarily the 2008, 9, 10 scenario, but it will happen. And to not think it won't happen would be silly.
Okay, we'll put some different things together for the next update.
Would you want us then to adjust the expenditure model based upon what we would be facing in terms of, you know, the ongoing capital projects, the
Right, I think we need to come up with a list of
Whatever.
a list of potential
Discretionary.
potential
Some type of prioritization, right, I would say, so that people would know. Because that's what this should do. What ifs? And to Brad's point, there's 1,000 different points with 1,000 different scenarios. But you grab onto one that says, here's what happens if we step off the rail. Because to your point, I could go see, you know, Joey Jolly here and say that there's nothing in here talking about like land being sold or anything else that would accelerate short-term debt being reduced. And other positives that would happen, or some major infrastructure capital valuation that goes into the deal that was pushed away recently, but that whole North Point project could rear its head again. And that's part in this district. So, I mean, you know, you could turn around and turn the frown upside down and say, hey, look, this is what's going to happen, in 5 years on an overly positive scenario as well. So, but I more leaning toward 2020 will probably be a time when we want to start to build in a little bit of it's going to hurt. That's what my magic 8 ball says. Yes.
I think it's very helpful to have these.
It's huge, it's huge, yeah. Brad, thank you. It's a lot of work for this.
Extremely transparent, when it throws it out,
Right.
what everybody thinks.
Right. Extremely.
Okay, we'll have an update for, we'll have another scenario for our next meeting.
Thanks.
We're scheduled for October again, am I right, Brad? Would that be?
Yeah, but I was thinking we might come back sooner since we've had some good feedback here. I'd like to just jump on it, man.
Okay, we'll be right on it.
Good job, Brad. Good job. Thank you. Well done.
All right, where are we?
Informational items.
All right, informational items. First one, report of Lincoln Way Special Education District 843. Ron?
Yes, two significant things. One was the budget that we approved earlier tonight. We went over that. And the other one, significance, is keeping our business manager on a part-time basis. We approved another 200 hours for him. Craig comes in evenings, weekends. Because of his full-time status in the past, when he comes in, he hits the ground running, so we get a lot of bang for our buck. So we're going to continue moving with him, not looking to replace with a full-time business manager at this time. Everybody seems to be pretty happy with it, and costs are down. That pretty much concludes my report.
Great. Any questions for Ron regarding 843? Not FOIA requests.
FOIA requests are included in your backup materials. I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Any questions regarding any of the FOIA requests? Audit findings.
Audit findings, no change. We're beginning the process now, and we'll be the next August and September here will be our audit months.
Questions regarding the audit findings?
I did make one comment, Scott, earlier, when I spoke to him this week, and that was, there's a lot of audit findings on there from 16, 17 that we are complete, and I suggested that once we get this next audit done, that we start picking them off the books, or keep them on another tab as part of that file, but we don't need to have once they're done.
I think they were done after the year, after this fiscal year
Right.
started, so I think they stay on there, they were technically on the last audit. Yeah.
So we'll be able to do
Create
an
another
update
tab.
this
Keep
fall.
them, but
Yeah.
just keep the first tab as our active tab.
Right.
Should there be any additional new audit things. Okay.
Any other feedback or comments? First reading, amend policy 120.
The policy 120 is the organizational chart, so I would just ask the board to review. We've got the old one in there. I've proposed a new one. We can discuss that between now and the next meeting. We can also discuss it at the next meeting, but just put a proposed organizational chart in there for your review. That's something we should at least take a look at annually.
I think we should talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah,
Because it does make some changes here.
There are some changes, correct. So the major change is the removal of Tim Riley as assistant superintendent. And so we moved Rob Schiffbauer, director of personnel, over to the other side. And so you do have the director of finance, buildings and grounds, and transportation that will still answer to Mr. Kaufman. And then the principals, director of staff, director of instruction staff development, the data assessment, special services, community relations, and personnel will answer to myself. And so this is something that Mr. Kirking and I have discussed in terms of a transition plan. This is something that's going to continue to be fluid here over the next year as we continue to move through the transition of the retirement of Tim.
Your feedback would obviously be very much appreciated over the next 30 days, but it is a step in the process as we move forward, and it does allow for that position to be eliminated. So,
And we've, I believe, made progress in this over the last 3 years. We'll continue to use this as a model moving forward.
there than it was. All right, any other questions? Buildings and ground report.
Buildings and grounds report is included in your backup materials. If you have any questions, I'm sure Mr. Wilkie would be happy to answer those.
I actually have one.
Okay.
On the, that natural gas that was, I think it was in October, where we purchased the natural gas storage. Did we ever, that was never utilized?
We currently have, our storage is 60% full right now. So we'll be moving into the next fiscal year with a 60% storage, which really...
Was that everything that was bought in that October timeframe still?
Actually, no, we bought, I don't remember the percentage, it may have been around 50% at that time. But each month, if we don't use our allocation, a little bit more goes into storage. So we're estimating our usage each month, buying the gas in advance. Which right now gas is very cheap, so it's good. It's a good thing.
Natural gas.
Natural gas. Natural gas.
I had a question about the projects over the summer. We're on track for opening day, I guess we call it.
At this point we are. Tennis courts are in really good shape. They'll open on Monday. Parking lot is substantially complete with some punch list items to go. The bleachers in the East Gym will be turned over on August 10th with some training. I have some concern about some of the door and hardware work with the life safety renovations. And we did ask the contractor to increase manpower moving forward to ensure that they're substantially complete by the first day of school. They put their carpentry sub on notice to increase manpower. They say they're going to comply. In the event they don't, we do have another contractor lined up to step.
Anything else? Community relations.
Community relations report is included in your backup materials for your review.
Any questions regarding the community relations report? The asset of the month.
Support systems at home give family members a hug every day and eat a meal together, which I know is difficult to do with everybody's busy schedules. At school, focus on the positive during conferences and teacher meetings. In the community, offer workshops for parents, provide and publicize family crisis hotlines.
Thank you. Next, legislative report.
No report.
Building security.
Just a quick update, and I was asked to just kind of give an update on where we are. The secure building entrances, now the cameras are on track to be open, ready to go for the first day of school. There'll be correspondence from the principal's home in terms of the process. You know, if a parent brings a lunch for Johnny, they'll get buzzed into the first door. There'll be a table there, post it, write the name on it, set it down, and go on their way. And then the next passing period, they'll be able to grab those items that might have been forgotten. You know, our scheduling, our visits will now be by appointment only. You know, obviously, if the school nurse calls home, they'll call the SSO to let them know that parent is coming. So, new processes and procedures for getting in the building every day will now be in place. We'll make some adjustments adjustments have been made to the schedule for doors to be open in each building. In terms of an early morning door, there'll be one door for the early morning arrivers. At East, it will be two because of the access of both parent drop-off and the buses is not conducive to do so. There will be deans manning those doors from the time they are unlocked until the time those doors are locked at the beginning of the school day. And so we've developed those schedules. We'll be sharing those schedules with the deans and then also during the orientation with the students. The other item, and we discussed this last year, and probably the most important item of prevention is to continue to encourage students that if they hear something, they see something, that they let us know. And we've been very fortunate that our students do bring concerns to our administrative team, and that's something through our asset program and PPS we will continue to develop and work on. We have made minor adjustments to our active shooter and disaster drills that we will go over with our faculty and staff on the Institute Day. Those are at the recommendations of Will County, but those different plans will continue to be evaluated as we move forward. Really, every time these unfortunate occurrences happen, there becomes different information, different literature, different best practice, and so we continue to do our best to stay up to date and work with our local authorities on that. Any questions that anybody might have?
Are we going to send out a communication on the new procedures for?
We are. That's going to come from the principals to the parents. Yes, correct. And included in that will be some of the time frames of the doors. Yes.
Who gets key cards to the buildings? How's that working?
Well, faculty and staff. So, and we'll continue to work through that as we implement this process and procedure.
So there are no.
Chris's comment that communications can
Yep.
be over the next several weeks, and it probably should be multiple if possible.
Yep.
To tell people to anticipate the communication.
Yep. Yep.
All right. Superintendent's district.
Nothing at this time.
Other district business. I have other district business. I need two of our board members to review the closed session minutes from September 21st, 2017 through May 17th, 2018. So I need to assign two members to review those closed minutes. Got them, Ron?
Sure.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Even put you on the spot. I did. Thank you. All right. If not, any correspondence or comments from members at this time? If not, I would entertain a motion to go into closed session. Closed session, we will discuss the appointment, employment compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of employees, establish sale or lease price of real estate, consider sale, purchase, securities, investment contracts, and litigation. Is there a motion to go into closed session? Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Go into closed session. Yes.